No, no, it's about to start. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Mindful Session. My name is Janisa Camara. I'm the host of the show. And as usual, I have the honor of having my co-host, Mr. David Sleep. Hello, sir.
Good afternoon. How you doing, my friend?
Surviving the times, my good man. Surviving the times. How are you?
I'm very well. It's been a busy week. I wanted to say it was great to watch you last week with Sherelle. Absolutely brilliant show. Absolutely loved it. Thank you so much. Some of the insights in there were brilliant. Really, really enjoyed the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Unfortunately, Sherelle didn't want you on the show, so, she and I had to do it alone. I'm
Now
not going to argue with Sherelle.
I know that's not true. I know that's not true.
I'm only joking. Sherelle loves you. But today's show, it's the theory of the mind. Now, I am so fascinated with the whole concept of it. Now, the theory of the mind is something that we never knew existed until they did the study on autism.
Mhm.
Yeah. So when, we talk about the theory of the mind, it's intriguing because you and I had a show about neural mirrors, neural mirroring. And
That's it.
it's just the concept of me acting of what I see, right?
hmm
Now, when they say this whole thing about, the theory of the mind, I'm just intrigued, David.
Bear in mind, it's just a theory.
I
And
know, but it is a theory, but scientists are studying the human body so much that they're trying to understand the whole spectrum of it.
exactly,
And
and that's the thing, is it's massive. It's so complex. There are so many variables. There are so many cognitive contact points in behavior to cognitive and psychological thought. There's also the emotional inputs that all have a bearing on how the mind works. So the theory of the mind, which explored so much in order to understand the autistic spectrum, gave us so much more.
precisely, precisely. And one thing during that study, they came to the realization that it's hard for someone who is autistic to lie. You understand?
Mhm.
Unlike, other individuals, that we lie, and the other name that is affiliated with the theory of the mind is mentalization.
Mhm.
Mentalization.
Yeah,
That
I'm
gives
sure
us
that
the
came from the
ability to
science guys.
lie. Huh?
I'm sure that came from the science guys. I I love the fact that psychologists, psychiatrists, scientists, researchers come up with theories, and they they're researched and investigated and peer reviewed. They go through huge complex testing to come to a final conclusion. But it's only when those theories, and they are theories, they are somebody saying this is why what I think and why I think it, and a large number of people that read those go, that makes sense. And we'll accept that until someone else comes along and goes, here's my theory about why this happens or what this particular challenge is about. And then that gets accepted, and theories grow and evolve, and we carry on learning. And we've been doing it since the dawn of time, Eunice. So you know this, I know this. We will do it until there is none of us left,
That is
because
so.
we will always be saying, actually, is that the right theory? Does that explain this bit? Oh, let's investigate that bit. And it carries on going. And it's brilliant that these scientists have work to do.
Yeah, you see, another thing, scientists and psychologists never used to see eye to eye. There was always that conflict. Now,
Hmm.
scientists, they say, well, if I don't see it, it's not real. It don't exist. But
Hmm.
let's put it to the test. And psychologists are saying, well, you know what? The mind can do this, but you cannot see the mind. So there was always that conflict with the psychologists and
Hmm.
the scientists.
Hmm.
And this has been going on so long, but now it's like they're coming together as to say, it is a fact. If you think about it, it's a fact. Because if you observe somebody in a way, that's what scientists tend to do. They tend to do a lot of studies into many different aspects,
Hmm.
of things. And psychologists study the mind,
Hmm.
the functions.
Yeah. And bearing in mind now, with the technology that's available to psychologists, to scientists, with the scanning processes that are available, we can see the neurons firing in the brain now without having to open
Honestly,
up the brain and take a look and say what's happening. And there was a time where humans actually thought that if you saw the brain live, they would take the lid off somebody and take a look at the brain, and they thought that they'd be able to actually see what was happening. Um, we know now that what we can see is very different to taking the lid off somebody,
it's a
and having
muscle.
it is a muscle, and like all muscles in the human body, you exercise it, it gets stronger. And we've seen that,
Absolutely.
and the theory of mind touches on this as well, because it was part of the theory of the mind that looked at dementia and understanding that if we kept somebody's mind active, we gave them challenges, things to carry on pushing the brain would carry on working. And it's
Functioning.
when we
That,
stop giving those challenges to the brain. And as you said, this started at understanding how the autistic spectrum worked and what the brain in that environment and in that setting was able to accomplish. But we learned so much more, and that's good science, that's good psychology working together, and we understand more from those kind of research efforts, that we would never have thought of before.
yeah, but you see, the thing is that we do so much research and we tend to discover something new every day. Every
Yeah.
day. Now, when we're going back now, as we spoke, earlier about the dinosaurs and so forth, you know, it, it's quite intriguing how we came from that belief into understanding a little bit more about dinosaurs. And back then they have the man with, the caveman carrying the bat, the big stick, hit the woman on the head and dragging her to his cave. So there's so much studies that have been done. We have evolved in so many different ways. Now, when we talk about, the theory of the mind, and they did the study on it, it's I find it quite interesting because when I heard theory of the mind the first time, I'm reading, okay, I'm supposed to be reading about my mind, but in actuality, it's reversed on me. You understand? It's basically me assuming what someone else is thinking, and
And what
which
do we
and
know
then
about making assumptions, Unisa?
oh, there you go, assumptions. So basically, that's the theory of the mind, assuming what someone else is going to do. You know, and it's quite fascinating because before we say, oh, don't assume. When you assume, you make out of yourself. You know, the bleep out of it. You
Hmm.
know, and it's now they have a theory to that assumption. It's no more. You're not. Oh, you're not assuming no more. It's now a theory of the mind.
And this is where I think we can get caught up in the academic outcomes and the academic theories. And as useful as they can be, and as informative as the potential is, they are a tool to help us understand the world around us, given what we understand at this moment in time. When we accept that that's the best we can get from these theories, and we don't hold on to them as truths, but they are theories to help us understand what we know now. When the next theory comes along, we're not so protective of the old theory. We're able to look at those two theories and say, which one actually makes sense to us now? Because we've grown, we've evolved, we've understood more things, we've learnt more things. Which is most accurate to what we understand now? And
Yeah,
go
but
back to the conversation about dinosaurs. 200 years ago, we were told that Tyrannosaurus rex was a slow, cumbersome creature who dragged his tail on the floor. And there are models from that time, and even the Natural History Museum in London, up until about 30, 40 years ago, represented T-Rex in that kind of formation with his tail on the floor. We've learned since then that actually the dynamics didn't work that way. T-Rex invariably had his tail up, was pointing forward, was pretty damn fast. But we learned, we developed a new theory. We've been able to accept it because the science and the research says this new theory outweighs the possibility of the old theory. And
right,
that's the same
and
theory of mind.
and yeah, and you know that's what I said earlier. You know, we are trying to understand the human body so much, and it's quite complex.
Yeah.
It's quite complex, but we are so determined to figure it out, and which
Yeah.
in many ways it's helpful, but in many other ways it's hurting us along the way. It depends on how you look at it. You
Hmm.
know,
And
a lot.
that's what I'm saying is when we accept these theories that come from the research and academia and everything else, they're tools. They're there to help us understand the world around us right now, where we are as human beings and how we operate, how our minds work, how our bodies work. It's there to help us understand what we know now. When we can allow that tool to grow and develop just like we do as humans, it's a lot easier for us to carry on learning and growing. It's when we hold on to a theory and say, no, this is the theory, this is the way this works, this is it, this is the truth. That's when it becomes an anchor and it holds us back.
But you know, not to well, you and I with that anyway. But if you recall, a lot of theories that were made back then, you know, talk about my favorite scientist or crazy psychologist or whatever you want to call him, he did a lot of studies, and back then they thought his theories, they thought he was a lunatic, Sigmund Freud. And Einstein called him point blank out that he's crazy.
Mm.
He said that, these theories made no sense. But now, if you think about it, if you go to a lot of universities, a lot of his theories now are so being studied. And a lot of us tend to utilize a lot of his material in our day-to-day world, in our day-to-day journey. So, so theories that are back, that are old, if you actually look at them, they're coming into effect now. And they're proving to be so much logic behind these theories.
Yeah. And in the world of psychology, the biography of Sigmund Freud and the other professionals that were working in that kind of cluster, because Freud was not working in a vacuum. Freud worked with a lot of other people at the time, and a lot of what has come to pass is that those theories have evolved. We're now seeing the clear growth of those psychological theories. And as true as they were then, when the world was saying, no, you're wrong, that's not the way it goes, that's your theory, we don't buy that, we don't accept that, people are now starting to go, actually, that wasn't so far from the truth. It was just the peers around weren't ready to hear that, because they were holding on to previous theories that they'd understood and they'd believed before that. And this is what I was saying. We have to accept that theories come and theories grow. I didn't say go, I said grow. And that's the point. When we allow theories to come and grow, we're able to keep evolving. It's when we hold on to them and we don't let the growth in that holds us back.
Absolutely. And it's life. The more we learn, the better we grow. And the more theories come out, the more they're able to expand on them, just like you said. And I think that with us as human beings, we tend to mentalize in a way where we tend to tell a lot of lies. You understand? Some of the theories, are they factual? Or are they just heading towards something? A lot of things, like you said, thanks to a lot of research, psychologists and scientists now working together, we're able to get a bit more understanding. So a lot of lies that have been told to us, they're coming now with actual, we can say, we can prove this now.
Yeah.
With the studies that are done, we have a lot of people that volunteer into a lot of these studies, which indeed I'm grateful for everyone that volunteers, doing a study. And it gives us the ability to grow. It gives us the ability to, well, you know what? I was just doing that yesterday. So this is what that means. Yeah. So this is why so-and-so is acting that way. So, the theory of, the mind actually gives us the ability to assume, as to say, well, you know what? David took an umbrella out the house with him, but it's not raining. So David believes it's going to rain. So if you also look at it in that retrospect, you can also understand the theory of the mind, how it just evolves. We're able to assume things. We're able to come to a conclusion.
Is it an assumption, or are we able to understand thought processes better? Because an assumption is not based on the thought processes of myself taking the umbrella out, the assumption is, would I take the umbrella out? No. So you must be completely cuckoo to be going out there with an umbrella. It's not raining. It doesn't look like it's going to rain. I'm making the assumption that B's gone nuts.
Well, you can
When
look
you
at it.
understand theory of the mind, you take a look at the person and saying, well, maybe they know something I don't. Maybe they know that in 2 hours the forecast is this ain't going to be a sunny day no more. So it's that switch from being able to make a what is almost always a negative assumption and take it to an educated, informed perception.
Okay. Now, there are two ways there are pros and cons. There are two ways to look at things. It's a two-way street. It's,
The brain is
I'm
binary.
going to sit here and make an assumption. David is
Alrighty.
taking the umbrella. Why is David taking the umbrella? Because David believes that it's going to rain. Or is it that David is taking the umbrella because he believes that the sun is going to be too hot, so he's using it to protect himself? You understand? So there are two ways, but what the theory of the mind does is let us assume that, okay, another theory that was done. I love these kids, I wish I could have been in that room where they were just, because sometimes when you read, you can actually visualize what you're reading. I tend to do that. So I tend to visualize things. So, sorry?
It helps with picture books.
Thank you. But you know what? Visualization is very good for a lot of people. It gives them understanding. So sometimes when they put pictures in a book, it also helps a person come to like a clear vision. And some people can actually look at the picture book without the words and know exactly what is going to be in the book.
And there's my point. When we are teaching children to read, we use pictures, we use visualizations to enhance what the text is written. And we do that in life. We not that long ago, I got a piece of furniture from a well-known Scandinavian store that came with instructions. There wasn't a single written word. Everything was in diagram form because we use visualizations to express what needs to happen.
I remember when I bought this doghouse, David, because my daughter wanted this doghouse. When I say it was big, I mean literally it's half my size. So I'm there struggling with this box, like, whoa. And I'm thinking that, okay, there might be some pictures in there because this is going to be some work. I open it. The only thing they had there that were pictures were the screws and what screw to use, and everything else was given to you in a descriptive format wording. Everything was worded. And sometimes I rather do with the words than the pictures, because sometimes the pictures make it more complicated. But the theory, the study that was done, these kids were put in a room and they were given choice. And they said, when you go to the store, which of this do you think your brother would like? Now, what do you think these kids did, David? They picked something that they would want.
Yeah. And I was also going to say, if you're referring to the test around colouring of toys and marketing and lighting of toys, the original testing went totally opposite to what was expected, because children of a certain age don't go with the rule book.
You know.
the, the boys went for stuff that was red, not stuff that was blue. The girls went for stuff that was blue, that wasn't red. All of those societal impacts that hadn't been put onto those children at that point in time did not fit. And as the children of older age ranges were put in the position of controlling what toys were for who, they chose what they wanted. They didn't choose for somebody else because that concept hadn't got there yet.
And this is why kindergarten comes into play. And this is how children learn get the ability to really understand a little bit more about others. And that is how the theory of the mind comes in. If I see David upset, I will go over to David and say, here's my toy, David, and give David a little pat on the back. And because when a child is born, we go through these different stages. We have yet to really understand. But when we start being in the midst of others, we're able to understand, others. We're able to socialize. And we, as human beings, we are very social. We look for that connection.
Yeah.
And also, that's where a lot of bad tricks are learned as well. You were mirroring. You see one kid doing this, I'm going to go home and try that.
Yeah, and this is where we see the adult inputs on those young sponge minds have a massive impact, because for the best part of probably about 200, maybe 230 years, our education around children has been very much led by what do the adults know about what they want the children to understand, not how, and why do children learn the things they learn. That's beginning to change. And the last kind of part of that change, I think, is something that certainly you and I have spoken about for the best part of the year. It's what Appa and Siobhan and I have been working on for best part of 2.5 years. And that's the understanding that when we work to how a child feels rather than how a child thinks, we are better able to get emotive responses and those learning skills that allow for that socialization. Because children don't know what to think yet. They haven't mastered that part.
And sorry to cut you, the way a child expresses themselves, and that is why I'm happy that I surround myself with the team that I tend to work with, associate with, deal with. It's the fact that we're able to sometimes sit and have an actual conversation. And one thing I always try to narrate to them is the way we think, they don't have that ability. And, not to go into drama or anything, but if you think about children that are abused, which indeed is quite sad, and, they come for therapy, they go for therapy, you just cannot bluntly ask them to say what happened.
Mm-hmm.
You have to go through the process of giving them the toys, and they can tell you the story through their play.
Mm-hmm.
You understand?
And that is a tool that really good therapists are able to use very, very subtly, very, very safely, in a way that doesn't re-traumatize a child.
Precisely.
And it's vital. And I think the theory of the mind is a useful tool in this process because it gives adults a better understanding of how that process works for a child. I'll give you an example. We have known for best part of about 50, 60 years that communication is not all verbal. It's not all about what you say or how you say it. It's the body language. It's the non-verbal communication. It's whether or not I'm looking at you or I'm looking over somewhere else and I'm still talking to you. Am I really paying attention to you? When that's in an adult, we know roughly what the percentages are for each of the component parts. When we apply those percentages to a child, we get very, very different results. Children haven't got to the communication skill levels where those percentages are the same as in adults.
Right. And, children come, when we touch up on children, and like you said, there are so many different ways to communicate, writing, sign language, also called, how you call it?
The non-verbal.
No, yeah, but no, well, when you do the sign language or it start with the, it'll come to me before we finish the show. But however, when a child comes for therapy, a lot of time you don't sit there and have a conversation with the kids. You have to have so much choice so that way you can utilize it to help that child be able to overcome what it is they're going through. And you have to give that child the ability to, and again, this is all theory of the mind. You can study the child's body movement, and like you said, communication. You can study the child's movement, and you will know when that child is ready because that child will be able to talk to you. And also, children are not just going to talk to a stranger. They have to feel that comfort. And we as adults have to give them that chance to have that trust and have that comfortability with us. Marketage.
It's that building the environment.
Marketage.
Building
the mind is disarrayed, but it's there.
Yeah.
It came back together.
Eventually. And for anybody that is struggling to communicate, doesn't matter whether they're a child or not, we will find ways, the human brain will find ways of communicating that. Sometimes that is through stress, because it's venting the frustration that it can't communicate what it's trying to communicate. Sometimes it's through play, sometimes it's through nervous laughter, sometimes it's all communication. And good professionals, whether they're coaches, whether they're youth workers, whether they're therapists, whether they're counselors, they all understand that communication is vital. Because if you miss part of that communication and you're only listening to the 35% that is spoken word, you are missing the vast majority of what is being said. And in children, it's even more important that environment is set in such a way that it is safe for that young person, for that child to express and to communicate. But as adults, we've got to get better at listening, not just telling.
And like they say, the best way to communicate is to listen. The best way to communicate is to also observe who you're communicating with. If I'm able to look at you and study your whole body movement, I can have a bit more understanding of your emotions, of what you're feeling, or sometimes what you're thinking. And a lot of people that, have a stroke, suffer from a stroke or whatever have you, or have dementia, they tend to have a lot of anger because they're not able to vocalize what it is they're thinking. And that is where theory of the mind comes in. Again, we have to put emphasis on theory of the mind into a lot of these things. When you are working with someone, when you are dealing with someone, when you're supporting someone, we have to understand the person's situation, what they're going through, why they're going through it. You have to go through the steps. You have to know the basics, because you just cannot start from the top and work it down. It's not going to work. You should, whatever a problem is, always start from the bottom. Know the roots, know the essence of why this is happening. And a lot of time, if I come to you and I see you upset, automatically, theory of the mind will kick in. Why is David upset? He's not talking to me. Did he hurt himself? Did somebody hurt him? A lot of the thought process start going on.
And this is the thing. It's about that exploration, so you can then create the environment so the communication is effective. And when you're able to do that, you're able to make sure that the person you're working with, you're supporting, knows that that's what's happening, because you're not going in there on an assumption of what you perceive to be the situation. But when they present something to you that might seem hostile, you can always go back and say, explain to me why that's what you're presenting. Am I getting the right message here? Because what I feel like you're presenting to me might not actually be what you're wanting me to receive. So let's build the communication. Let's clarify a situation rather than accepting the perception of what it is. Like you say, understand what's going on for that person and then move forward from it.
Precisely. And also, when we are working with people, when we are with someone that we care about, they are going through, some people don't want to express themselves verbally. You give them the opportunity to come around. Or some people want to express it through writing. Give them a pen and paper or pencil. Let them get it out. Sorry?
Just said Marshall Mathers, Eminem.
I don't know who that is.
Well, he's a poet.
People think he's a lunatic.
People think he's a lunatic. But his form of expression was through lyrical poetry.
Yeah.
He wrote it down. He got it all out of his head. And when he was able to...
As psychotic as he might sound, but that's how he was feeling. That's how he's feeling. Precisely.
Darcy Bussell. Her expression format was dance. And she became one of the country's most famous ballerinas. Because she used dance as her way of expressing her emotion. And, there are performers of all kinds that you and I have both been around who use performance as their way of expressing the challenges that they're facing.
Of course. And, it's just a matter, again, of knowing yourself. If you know yourself, you'll be able to understand people, and you'll be able to, life is not easy. If
Hell no.
anyone is to ever sit down and say, "Oh, I'm having a perfect life," you see my clothes, you see my house, you see my car, I don't have no worries in the world. You see my jet, you see this, you see that. Really? And a lot of people tend to think the more money you have, the less problems you have. In actuality, the more money you have, the more of a headache you get, the more problems.
Yeah.
And I think
That
that sometimes people that don't have money, poor people, have a more peaceful life.
and when you speak to people who travel between those two extremes, invariably they find the kinder personalities in the extreme that doesn't have the private jet. They find the kindness of humanity in those that have least. They find
Well,
the greatest fear and the greatest anxiety in the people that have the most.
that is so. See, the thing also, David, is that when, like you just said, when in between, when you're transitioning, but I think what gives us a sense of empathy when we go through the stages, because when you experience something and someone else is going through it, you're able to understand, you're able to support them, you're able to, empathize with
Mm.
those people. And
Yeah,
again, theory of the mind, you know what you're going through. You're not
yeah,
assuming no more. It's theory of the mind.
yeah.
So
And
you're able to support. Hmm.
you touch on a third of really good therapeutic practice: empathy. Empathy is one third of really good therapeutic practice. The other two thirds are congruence and unconditional positive regard. And when you are self aware, really self aware, empathy, congruence, and unconditional positive regard come to the fore. And the theory of the mind fits perfectly. It's like cogs in a wheel. It fits perfectly with those three elements. And when you've got all of that working together, you're able to provide support to people organically without thinking all that much, because your own self-awareness allows those things to flow.
But
And a lot of research around the theory of the mind was focused on where people are challenged with their cognitive actions based on mental dysfunction as it was seen at the time. And what they've actually worked out is it's just a different functioning rather than a dysfunctioning.
yeah, you see, David, I think a good therapist, I think a good psychotherapist is basically someone that is that has sympathy for life, has that, who's a nurturer, a
Okay.
mother. I think a mother is a perfect, well, not all mothers, but about 97% of the mothers out there, because you know when a child gets hurt, 9 out of 10 they run straight to mommy, and mommy knows what to say, how to say it, and how to react. It
No,
has
no, I
some.
mean, there are an awful lot of dads out there that can do the same. I get your point,
Absolutely.
I get your
But
point.
but if you look at society and the way it's going, we as fathers are not getting the credit that we deserve. There are wonderful fathers out there, absolutely, positively. You know, my father was the type. If I need something, I will call him up,
Hmm.
and he would say, "Don't tell mom, okay?" I say, "Yeah." So there are some wonderful fathers out there, and my whole thing in life was always to model my father, but also having my mother, who's always so supportive, there for me, gave me that kind of sensitive part to say, I have to respect a woman. I'm not ever going to disrespect a woman. I will try to give out. And the father aspect, you got to be tough because you're expected to protect your family. You're expected to provide for your family. You understand? So both of them come together.
And this,
It's hard to say, go ahead, I know you go.
it just brings us right back to one, self-awareness, two, the duality of support systems. So you've got those two sides,
Reality.
that duality of reality, right? We have seen, and we were lied to so much about having singularity dominance in our society. We were told about the alpha male in the animal kingdom rules the roost, as it were. You know, the lion, the the leader of the pride, the silverback gorilla is the king of the gorilla troop. We knew back then that was a lie, but we told it to ourselves as a way of controlling people in a way that the systems wanted us to be controlled at the time. But we're now understanding that we need both these things. We don't just need the alpha male element in our personality, and we don't
Absolutely
just
not.
need the female personality in ourselves. We need both of them working together in order to
And
give
then,
us balance.
and when those two come together, that gives us the ability to be able to give love, show love. You like that, right?
I like what you did there. That is absolutely perfectly true. It is that balance that allows us to take our self awareness and show it to the world in a way that is only ever positive.
That is so. And what I love, David, is that we get on a topic today. We are here the 15th of August, and we are deciding to talk about the theory of the mind. And what we do is that not just do we focus on it, but we tend to touch upon different elements of it to give a better understanding as to the topic. And
Mhm.
I think this is why I think so many things come into play. I think that's why a lot of people appreciate this show. I think that is why I love this show. I love doing this show, and I think the information that we give out, is so helpful to so many people. And I thank you for being a part of this show.
And I love the fact that you and I we can have the banter that you and I have, and we can really show the audience that we are who we are. We yeah, there is no script, there is no auto cue. This is very much you and I having a conversation every week, but the topics become a point of focus. And we're able to, I hope, show the contact points of what makes that point of focus reality for other people. And having that point of focus as something that is tangible, it's something that impacts on all of us in a way that is understandable, is comfortable, and I hope not just educational, but I hope it's kind of fun. But we are the best at being the best we can be right here, right now.
I like that. Well, as the show is coming to an end, David, like you said, we give the best of what we can give. And we always say that we welcome everyone to get involved during the show. We respond to the messages that are coming in to the best of our ability. During the show or after the show, we tend to interact. The emails that come in, I tend to respond to, they forward them to me, the team at the studio. So we do tend to get involved and do appreciate everyone. But as I always say, I never want anyone out there to feel as though whatever they're going through alone.
Yeah.
Today I sat down, and I was just reflecting on my dad, and I was so emotional, David. I had to reach out to my brother. And before I can talk, the theory of the mind, he kicked in. He was like, "You're thinking about dad, aren't you?" Yeah, I was. So it's just knowing that someone is there to support you makes a difference. And I always say, if you go to my website, unisacamara.com, there is a toll-free number you can always call for support. You don't cost a thing. Someone is going to be there to listen to you. And if you feel as though you need more time, there's no time limit. You can talk, perfect stranger, or you can contact Apple as well. The team at Apple will be able to support you. The whole element of what we do is we know that life is not easy. And we have walked that path. It might not be the path you are walking on, but we have walked our own path. David was injured. He was supposed to be an athlete by now, but he went through a situation that, now he's here helping others. I went through a situation where by now I could have been in the NFL playing football, but we all go through a situation. And by the way, if you go to New York High School, you see my football, stories. But whatever it is, we all go through life and we all have our stories to tell. And just know that there's someone always listening. Someone is always willing to support you. Write your problems down. If you think you're having a bad day, don't focus on your bad days. Write down the good that you achieved during that day, the good things that have happened to you that day. If you're having an anxiety attack, sit back, take a breather, close your eyes, focus on something else. David, is there anything you want to say, my good man?
As the show comes to a close, I want to make sure that everyone out there has a great week ahead of you. It's yours to take. Go and enjoy it. We will see you again next week. We will go through the comments. We will respond to everything that's coming during the show. But Unisa, as always, it's great to have a conversation on air. It's great to kind of explore the topics that we have. And as always, it's been a pleasure.
I bid you all a good night, good day, and It's an honor being here with you again, David. Good night, everyone.